Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this 2011 Candidates Forum. Tonight, we're going to be talking to the candidates for Wards 4 and Wards 5. I'm George Peck with the Aurora Chamber of Commerce, and along with the Aurora Businesswomen, the Aurora Sentinel, and the League of Women Voters, we are sponsoring tonight's event. There are many issues facing the voters here in Aurora, and we believe that forums like these are the best way for voters to not only see the candidates, but also to hear their perspectives on the issues. We hope that by helping you become a more informed voter, you can make the best choices in selecting the men and women to sit on the Aurora City Council. The decisions they make will affect our community for many years to come. Now I'd like to turn things over this evening to our moderator. Ladies and gentlemen from the League of Women Voters, let's welcome Karen Hart. Karen?
Thank you, George. Thank you, George. This forum is one of 4 our organizations are sponsoring this election season. They all feature candidates for the Aurora City Council, but this session focuses on Wards 4 and 5. Tonight's forum will include questions I will ask on behalf of the sponsors and questions posed by Dave Perry and Sarah Castellanos from the Aurora Sentinel. First, let's meet the candidates. There are 2 candidates running in Ward 4. Molly Markert was elected to Aurora City Council's Ward 4 in 2003 and re-elected in 2007. A former state representative, Ms. Markert enjoys being an advocate for her constituents and empowering residents to make positive changes throughout the community. She earned a BS in Managing Human Service Programs from Metropolitan State College and a master's degree in management, focusing on human relations and organizational behavior from the University of Phoenix. She works for RCCO East Metro as the contract manager and the community liaison, where she's responsible for recruiting healthcare providers to meet the needs of Medicaid clients and decrease emergency room visits and hospital readmissions. The challenger in Ward 4 is Adrienne Markopoulos. She comes from humble beginnings in the projects of Baltimore, Maryland, but she sought education to ensure a better life for her family. Markopoulos is a graduate of the University of Miami and the Miami Institute of Psychology. She is currently a therapist at the Jefferson Center for Mental Health and has been in the profession for more than 14 years. She has taught classes to college students and DUI offenders, performed mediation for divorcing couples, and managed mental health programs. Most rewarding in her view is the commitment to serving in various capacities on behalf of fellow Republicans. Moving on to Ward 5. Alfonso Nunez and his family have owned La Cueva Mexican restaurant on East Colfax Avenue since 1974, and he has been a resident of Aurora since 1986. Mr. Nunez retired from the Aurora Fire Department in 2003 after 22 years of service as a firefighter. He attended the Community College of Aurora for general education and Johnson & Wales University for the culinary arts. Mr. Nunez has served on numerous boards and commissions. In 2007, he ran for Aurora City Council in Ward 5, and in 2009 for council member at large. These experiences have taught him about the diverse communities within Aurora. Bob Roth is the current city council member in Ward 5. He's a native Coloradan who was born in Leadville and has been a proud resident of Aurora in the Tower Park community for 12 years. Mr. Roth is currently a contract consultant in the commercial construction industry, specializing in budgeting, business development, and process review. Mr. Roth has been in the commercial construction and development profession since 1984. He and his wife, Judy, have 4 children and 2 grandchildren. Those are our candidates for City Council in Wards 4 and 5. Before we begin with opening statements, I'd like to let our candidates know how the questions will proceed. I will ask questions to all the candidates on behalf of the sponsors, and they will each have 1 minute to respond. Pairs of candidates will also receive questions from our Aurora Sentinel representatives. Again, they will have 1 minute to respond, but for the media questions, they will also have an opportunity for a 30-second rebuttal. Please pay close attention to our timekeepers. They will time the opening and closing statements, the responses, and the rebuttals. And they will signal when 15 seconds are remaining and when the time is up. We will now begin with our 1-minute opening statements, starting with Ward 4 candidate Molly Markert.
Do I have permission? Can we start? Great, thank you. My name, as we said, is Molly Markert. My legal name is Molly Margaret Markert, which is what appears on the ballot. And I'm asking my constituents to mark it for Markert one more time. I love what I get to do as a Ward 4 City Council person. I love being able to work on behalf of my ward. We have a long list of accomplishments of things that individuals have done to make their neighborhood, their community, their place better. All of that is driven by my priorities, which are to maintain and increase property values, because in the end, that's the one thing that the city can give back to its residents. We do that through safety, we do that through parks, we do that through amenities, and we do that through encouraging people to be involved and to take a stand. Using that model, we've created the Havana Business Improvement District, replaced Buckingham Square with Gardens on Havana, and we're a huge part of being able to activate the people around Heather Ridge Golf Course to protect their open space and maintain their quality of life. That's why I want to run again. Thank you.
Adrian Markopoulos.
Hello, I'd like to say my name once more because people have a tendency to say it incorrectly, as do I on occasion. It's Adrian Markopoulos. And as you know, I'm running against the incumbent. I'm running because I believe in democracy and I believe in service. And I want to take this opportunity to give you a choice. I want you to be able to decide between myself and Molly. And during the course of this debate, I'm sure you'll see how very different we are. Thank you.
And in Ward 5, Alfonso Nunez.
Hello, my name is Alfonso Nunez, and I'm running for Ward 5 City Council. I've had the great privilege of serving you as a firefighter for over 23 years, and this is my community, and there isn't more than it that I enjoyed living here. I had a great opportunity walking neighborhoods, being able to have a voter contact card, and on the contact card, it asks you to list the things that are important in our ward and the issues that are facing our ward. There are very many issues facing our ward and facing our city as well. Hopefully, I'm running to be a voice for the people of Ward 5, and I hope that I get that opportunity to serve you in another capacity as your Ward 5 City Council member. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Roth.
First of all, thank you for coming out this evening. My name is Bob Roth, and I am the current Ward 5 City Council member. As mentioned, I am a Colorado native, but not many people can claim that they were born in Leadville. My message, as I am in this campaign this year, is to make Aurora a sister city, not a second city. You don't think of Minneapolis without St. Paul. There's no reason that in this metro area we can't think of Aurora in the same light that we think about Denver. So I want it to be a sister city, not a second city. In order to do that, we need to make Aurora a place that you want to live, work, and play. In the 9 months that I've been in office, just a few of the things that I've been involved in very actively and intimately are the Heather Gardens Clubhouse project, the Dam East Wall project, the Seven Hills Veterinarian Clinic project, and I'm currently meeting with neighborhood leaders and developers on the Regatta Plaza and the 9 Mile RTD Center. So that's the things that I'm currently doing.
Thank you. We'll now begin with our questions. The first question is for all candidates. As our metro community has become increasingly interdependent, what would you specifically do as a council member to improve intergovernmental cooperation and shared economic development with other jurisdictions in the metro area? We'll begin our answers with Ward 5 candidate Bob Roth.
Thank you very much. You know, I can answer that from a personal perspective, not what I would do, but what I am doing. The Gaylord project is a great example of exactly what you're referring to. There was a lot of misinformation in the press, specifically the Denver newspaper, about exactly what was happening with Gaylord and with the National Western. There wasn't a border war. We're thrilled to death that Gaylord is coming here, and the National Western is a 107-year-old Denver institution that needs to stay a Denver institution. If it makes sense for them to co-locate, that's wonderful. And we are willing, and I am willing, to work with Denver City Council and Denver leaders to make sure that there is an era of cooperation and that regional partnership that you referred to. Thank you.
Alfonso Nunez.
First thing that I'm going to look at is how it's going to affect my ward, because those are the people that I'm going to represent. So with that said, obviously, we have to work with our surrounding communities and make sure that we're on the same page, that we're honest, and that make sure we take care of the people of Aurora, because, I mean, that's important. We have a big stake in this. So really, collaboration obviously is important, but I want to make sure that, that our people of Aurora and the residents in Ward 5 are taken care of, first and foremost.
Ward 4 candidate Adrian Markopoulos.
Thank you. I think the most important thing is working with the development and planning committees to make sure that in the different areas we're able to work together to create a win-win situation for all involved. As you all know, I'm not a career politician, so I'd like to think outside the box and bring some new ideas to the city.
And Molly Markert.
Thanks. There's nothing like some experience to be able to get things done. When I was in the legislature, we started the whole concept of interdependence in terms of municipal level. Since I've been on city council, we've been involved in the Colorado Municipal League, starting the Women in Municipal Government Network that now is actively recruiting candidates to run for office. When I chaired the public, what we call PIR, Public Information Intergovernmental Relations Committee on Council, it's crucial to think in terms of interdependence. I think one of the most important legacies of the past 8 years has been our ability to work with the Western Slope, especially around water issues. That kind of interdependence is going to keep the city and the state in a true position of leadership throughout the next decade, the next century. But Aurora's been the one to lead the intercollaboration throughout the different governmental entities.
Thank you. The next questions will come from the Aurora Sentinel, posed to specific pairs of candidates. You will have 1 minute to respond, and you may also make a 30-second rebuttal. We'll begin our media questions with Sarah Castellanos, reporter with the Aurora Sentinel.
Thank you. This question is for Molly Markert and Adrian Markopoulos. What do you think is the biggest issue right now facing Ward 4 today, and how would you address that issue if you were elected?
Do you have a preference as to who goes first?
Molly, please start.
Sure. Everybody's issue is the biggest to them. So my job as the ward person is to synthesize and condense all of that and see the trends, see the themes, see the things that are consistent across the different geography in the ward. I go back to public safety and property values as the thing that everybody has in common. The majority of concerns that people have around code enforcement, around public safety, around transportation, are all things that relate to the value of properties. More importantly, though, what are we doing to make it better? I've continued to boast that I have all of the light rail stations in our ward, and we will have the new ones as well. But that's truly an opportunity for growth and development and for improving both Aurora's image and the value of the property of the people in my ward. So as we work to widen 225 from Mississippi down and to bring light rail up, that truly is going to be the unifying feature, I think, in improving, being the most important solution for the transportation and property value issues that we have. Thanks.
I believe that it's essential for us to identify the most important thing, and I have done that. I've been in town for 2.5 years, and I've diligently tried to understand the issues that surround this community. The most important thing is jobs. We need jobs, and we need businesses. I've been walking the campaign trail, knocking on doors, and meeting with business owners. We need a business-friendly community.
Each candidate now has the opportunity for a 30-second rebuttal. Molly, please go first.
Sure, absolutely. Jobs are what people have to do all day. You've got one, I've got one, a couple. Jobs are what the kind of work that we do brings. The Havana Business Improvement District is actually as vital an economic driver on our side of town as the East. Without a doubt, the job issue is what's crucial to people and what we work on through the construction projects, light rail, all the things from daycare on up. All of those positions are essential in order to allow people to be able to work and to succeed. So there's nothing more important. It's the bottom line.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that we agree on that. I was meeting with someone today, and he was telling me about 4 car dealerships that have gone under in the last few years that Molly has been serving. The unfortunate thing is that in this position, Molly has not stepped up and supported businesses to the extent that they need to be supported. If there is no business, there is no job or jobs for our citizens. And this is what our revenue comes from. Do I support the homeowners? Absolutely. But unfortunately, if they don't have jobs, they won't keep their homes. So let's keep it in perspective in terms of priorities.
And now a question from Dave Perry, editor of the Aurora Sentinel.
My question is for Mr. Nunez and Roth, and I want to talk a little bit about the city's reputation. And those who live here and work here and are familiar with Aurora have generally a very different opinion about the city than a lot of people do from outside of Aurora. And a lot of people would argue that the people who live and work here suffer because of some erroneous ideas about what life is like here and what the city's like. And I was wondering, as a city council person, whether, first of all, you see this as a problem, and if so, if you'd be willing to address it either by funding someone here in the city to do some marketing and branding and try and dispel some of those rumors, or whether the city should just go the way it has and kind of let things work out on their own. Do you want to start, Mr. Nunez?
Sure. That's a really interesting question because being a firefighter for 23 years in the city, the moment that you step outside of Aurora, everybody in the country knows us. They know us for the public-private partnership that we have with Rural Metro Ambulance and the Aurora Fire Department, that when they're looking to put together a partnership like that, Aurora is the example. But I think that our reputation, who we are, what we stand for in Aurora, starts with our city council. We're the ones that have to set the example, and from there, it's gone forward on who we are and what we do. So, sure, a PR person would be a great thing, but I really think that it starts at the city council level. Thank you.
Bob?
Yeah, it's interesting because I've spoken on this several times recently. First of all, I want you to know that my first involvement in volunteerism in the city of Aurora was with VPAB, Visitors Promotion Advisory Board. So that's something that was very key to me and very close to my heart, is to promote the city and show what good the city has to offer. That was the very first thing that I was involved in. As you know, we now have Visit Aurora. Visit Aurora has done an unbelievable job of getting the word out there. I'm convinced, and this is probably not going to be a very popular statement, but I'm convinced that there is a Denver media bias against Aurora. And I think that, as I said earlier, that's part of the reason why I'm very adamant on making this a sister city, not a second city. I do think that our fire department, our police department are second to none. We have great amenities in the city, and we need to advertise them and stand at the highest hilltop and yell about them.
It doesn't sound like there's a lot to rebut here, so I'm just going to ask for the last 30 seconds here, if you take one more look at this and just, do you think that the city should aggressively then go after the Denver media bias or some of the problems that cause the city's reputation to suffer, or whether you should just kind of go the course and let things play itself out? Alfonso?
That's a... well, obviously, obviously there's an issue. One thing that we're looking at now is with the Gaylord project. People are saying that we're trying to steal the stock show, and really that's really not the case. I mean, it's so far away from all the incentives and everything being approved that I really think collaboration is what we've got to work on. We've got to be able to work with Denver City Council. For example, all the borders that cross our cities with Denver and Aurora, there's so many of them. There's so many of them. One of the things that I asked Mayor Hancock when he got elected was, are you going to look at the borders that we have at Denver and Aurora on Yosemite? I've been in business there for 40 years, and I'd like to see the area kind of turn around, especially on the Denver side, where we're doing our part. So I think we have to hold each other accountable. Thank you.
Okay. Bob?
I think that Gary Aurora has started that process that you're describing, and I think they're doing a very good job. I think that that is the PR process that we kind of have the structure for already, and I'm more than willing to support that to my best ability. Again, that is where my heart for the city started, and that's where it continues to be. So, you know, specifically, is there a way that we can address some of the media bias? Possibly. I don't know exactly the direct answer to your question at the moment, but I do think that it's about touting what we have.
And now another question from Sarah Castellanos.
This question is for Bob Roth and Alfonso Nunez. Do you think that the city is business friendly? Why or why not? And if not, please name some specific things you'd like to change. Bob, please start.
You know, I think that Aurora does have a reputation as being a place where it's sometimes difficult to do business. I think that, again, that is changing as well. There are a number of things that I think that are happening, well, that I know that are happening, that are changing that. First of all is the hiring of Mr. Skip Noe as the city manager. Skip understands business. He understands the relationship between business and municipal government, and he is helping promote business in the city of Aurora. Andre Amanek and some of her folks in her department have provided the business roundtable. There's a lot of different ways that city employees are reaching out and doing a better job of communicating with the business community of what's available and how it's available, counseling, different programs, and I think that the process is already starting.
Definitely. One of the issues I think that we could definitely work on is the building permit process. Being myself, going through the building process, being delayed 6 months because the code book was interpreted differently, $60,000 later, 6 months later, and then before I'm even done with the project, then I'm audited by the tax person. So I think that really doesn't set business-friendly per se as we want it to be. But I think it's gotten better. Another thing is if we're going to shop Aurora, we need a one-stop shopping. For example, our website needs to be where if somebody's looking at it, they can look at everything that Aurora has to offer. So I mean, I think definitely improving the building issuing permit process, those things are very hindrance to small business. Also the signs, people have issues with signs right now and they have to have their sign to be able to do business. Thank you.
Bob, you have the opportunity for a 30-second rebuttal.
Thank you. Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, on the sign issue, that's really, quite honestly, kind of an old issue because there was a recent ordinance passed that a lot of businesses are very happy with, and so that's an issue that's kind of water under the bridge. In regards to the planning department, I agree with Alfonso that there have been some issues there, and I have, with my background in the construction, have been a proponent for helping break down some of those walls and make it easier for business to do business in the city of Aurora.
I don't think that the sign issue is gone. There are 2 businesses down the street from my establishment that had to close because they couldn't get their sign up. So I still think it's a live issue. I think we need to address it. We need to be more customer service friendly because we're not going to be able to generate sales tax if we don't have businesses.
Now a question from Dave Perry.
This question is for Molly and Adrian, and I'd like to talk a little bit about intercooperation and intergovernmental agreements, and specifically with Denver. And it seems that during this election, we've heard a lot about people wanting to be cooperative with Denver, especially in light of what's happening with the stock show in Gaylord. And I would argue that Aurora and even Adams County have been good faith players with Denver for a long time, and in the spirit of cooperation, they ended up with the short end of the stick, especially when it came to noise abatement with Stapleton Airport. With the development of the new airport, Adams County would argue pretty much against how much they got out of being cooperative with Denver, and that oftentimes Denver is king of cooperation when it's in their favor and when it benefits that city. And given that I appreciate that a lot can come from the Denver Regional Council of Governments and trying to be good faith players here, but the city of Aurora oftentimes just ends up with the short end of the stick, either with road money or with RTD and the Fast Tracks program, and now they're going to negotiation possibly with Denver on the National Western Stock Show. Who is going to benefit the most here from this kind of cooperation, and is there a fine line between cooperating and acquiescing to the city? Molly, you want to start?
I can. I wonder, can we start with the rebuttal, though? I'm not, I appreciate your perspective. That's your job. That's what you need to do. I'm not sure that I would agree on all of those fronts. I think one of the most, go back, it's a shame we're both so old, but go back to the moving of DIA. That enhanced the quality of life for Aurora in a way that can't be quantified. Now, there was some fun in being able to take those noise abatement checks and spend them to acquire extra open space for Aurora to protect it from ever being in a noise influence area the way that Stapleton did. But we opened up a good half of the city by being able to move that airport out. So I'm not sure Morris Heights, North Aurora got the short end of that stick.
And Aurora lost out on being able to develop Front Range Airport because of the position Denver took on what they weren't going to allow there. I mean, there are just several people, I'm not saying I'm right or wrong, but there are several people who would argue that there were a lot of problems that Aurora ended up with at the end of the negotiation that they went into with a lot of cooperation. And
I don't know that that should count for our minute, but I would disagree. Front Range Airport feels very, very strongly that they're in a great position to develop, not to mention our leadership on WISE, which is the water project, not to mention our continued leadership around regional collaboration, the dollars that we do get from DRCOG. We wouldn't have the 17th Avenue interchange, Colfax, and all that if it wasn't for regional collaboration. So I guess when we do the rebuttal, we'll work together. So, a new stop sign, but anyway, I beg to differ.
Adrian?
Yes, this is going to be one of those occasions where I agree with Molly. I think it's going to be essential for Aurora to continue to work with Denver. I think we can do so from coming from a position of power and working collaboratively, remembering the things that are important to us. But I think the absolute last thing that we should do is sever our ties.
Okay. Molly, anything you want to add to that? Or?
I can think of so many examples, Dave, where Denver has followed our lead. For example, along Havana, we started a program called Bank on Havana. We couldn't quite make it work the way it needed to, but it was 6 months later that Denver knocked and said, hey, can I do something like that? So in many, many cases, the sign code is another great example. We led the way, and yet that's going to impact all of our western border, all those zigzags. So I wouldn't necessarily say that we get the short end of the stick. We're a leader on that water project without a doubt, because we've got the assets, so.
Okay.
No rebuttal.
Okay.
Thank you. I will ask the next question of all the candidates. In 2008, Aurora City Council adopted a goal that supported our youth through the formation of America's Promise Initiative. Aurora was named one of the 100 best communities for youth in 2010, but much work remains to be done. As a council member, what specifically will you do to actively assist in the efforts to support Aurora's youth? We'll begin our answers with Molly Markert.
Well, you picked the one that is my absolute all-time favorite. When we all started on council, there was nothing that acknowledged the youth and the youth contribution, and since I had two darling ones at home that were more than outspoken, it was easy to make activating the Youth Commission a priority, which they have become. They're been around the state in terms of some of the leadership that they've shown. But beyond that is their initiative. We were able to do the America's Promise. We have the 100 Best Communities. I mean, all of those things. What came out of the America's Promise is a monthly meeting, an online resource bank, regular classes, everything from parents on how to understand college to how to understand your kids, which is good luck to the teacher of that one. But we've done a ton of work around elevating the value of youth in this community. That work continues. The youth have been an extreme driver in the Recreation Center initiative, and right now they're working on a tobacco cessation initiative coming from the kids. So I think that's pretty exciting and is truly the mark of new young leadership.
Adrian Markopoulos.
I think it's wonderful that Aurora has been involved in trying to improve the lives of young people. Unfortunately, we still have an extremely high dropout rate. Additionally, I know that Molly supports a tax increase for recreation. That's something that I happen to be against. I think if elected, I will definitely work alongside the city council members as well as school board members to try to understand the needs of our youth to do whatever's possible. I think that even if we're not on the school board, we all have a voice and we need to take part in making our schools better. Everyone in Aurora, all of our children cannot be in the Cherry Creek schools. Let's work together to make sure that everyone, every child in Aurora gets a good education. Now, I personally think that's more important than the recreational issue. Just want to put it out there.
Alfonso Nunez?
I think it's education. We have 3 industries that are huge in Aurora, which I think I'd like to see us flourish. The aerospace industry, bioscience, and the green technology jobs. The school boards are on board with the STEM school, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. If we invest in education with our children, we can train these children for these 21st century jobs. And that's exactly what the school boards are doing with these schools in place now. Also, I don't believe that education is only the responsibility of the school boards. It's the responsibility of the community as well. For example, my family and I have a foundation that has raised over $150,000 that gives college scholarships to deserving Aurora youth. Those are the kind of things that we have to do as a community to make sure that we prepare our children for these 21st century jobs.
And Bob Roth?
Sometimes the most difficult position is last because Molly stole 2/3 of my thunder and Alfonso stole the other third. I have been involved in the Aurora Youth Commission, not as much as I would like to, but I have been involved in the Aurora Youth Commission and see some of the wonderful things that they're doing. I have been meeting, I've had 2 different meetings with the group that is on the warpath for the tobacco cessation initiative, so I'm very familiar with that. And then I also am very familiar with and very supportive of education in Aurora, both Cherry Creek Schools and APS. I attended the grand opening of the STEM school. I attended a number of ribbon cuttings and a number of groundbreakings of the various educational facilities, Meadowwood Child Development Center, a number of them. And that's something that's very close to my heart that I want to make sure that we provide the best education for our children.
Thank you. The next questions will come from the Aurora Sentinel, starting with reporter Sarah Castellanos.
This next question is for Adrian Markopoulos and Molly Markert. Please name one thing that the current city council has done in the past 2 years that you've been pleased with, and name one thing that the current city council has done in the past 2 years that you did not support and would like to change. Adrian, please start.
Well, I'd have to say I've been in agreement with the recent decision with police in terms of the 2 per 1,000, changing that and coming up with something that will save the city money. So that's something that I wholeheartedly endorse. In terms of something that I'm not comfortable with, I didn't necessarily want, well, nothing comes to mind right now.
I'm thinking. I'm not sure I can think back 2 meetings, much less 2 years. The joy of council is that collaboration concept that you're talking about. So we don't often get in positions where it's win or lose, yes or no. I mean, we have all the buttons. But I think we work really hard to get to consensus so that the decisions we make serve our wards and the best of our city. Certainly, the police agreement was a long, long conversation that left us with a future for the community. Every year, the budget is one of the best things that we do. It's the hardest thing that we do, and I would also put it in the column of the thing I don't support the most, because it's a line item budget with all kinds of good and bad therein. But I think across the years, what we have been able to do with the revenue that we have, that we've been able to generate through sales tax, through use tax, has been put to good use in the budget, and likewise, we've lost pools, libraries, because of that same budget. So that would be my thought.
For your rebuttal, I would like you to please answer what would be your first priority in office if you were elected. Adrienne, you can start.
My first priority would be jobs. I can't send this message enough in terms of the importance of continuing to support current businesses and trying to entice new businesses. I'm open to incentives, tax cuts, loans, grants, whatever it takes. We need to bring businesses into our community for it to be vital.
I'm not a linear thinker. I usually have 5 or 6 things going on at once, so it's hard to pick one. Yesterday, I met with a Korean businessman who's a Vietnam-era veteran who needs some help from the city. That's a priority. That's on the to-do list for today. Likewise, getting that 225 light rail line cooking. Yale Bridge is going out, opportunity for a sound wall to come in. I love driving that bulldozer when we did Buckingham. I want to do that again. That was pretty cool. So there's a ton of stuff that I see as high priorities. You have to be able to kind of do a little bit of all of it at once, and so to say any one thing is pretty hard to pick. We're in the middle of all kinds of other work around the agencies, the safety agencies. It's coming up too. Gotcha.
And now a question from Aurora Sentinel editor Dave Perry.
This question is for Alfonso and Bob, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the 2 per thousand. For the benefit of viewers, that's often seen as a 1993 voter mandate to employ 2 officers for every 1,000 residents that came with a tax increase that could or could not have paid for that. And the city recently negotiated an agreement with a police union that has at least taken that off the back burner and may or may not have been an answer to the city's financial quagmire as to whether or not they can afford to fund the 2 per thousand initiative. And I was wondering if each of you would tell me, would you be willing now at this point just to go to voters and have them either pass a tax increase that would fully fund 2 per thousand and help the city financially, or do away with it and do away with the tax increase at the same time? Alfonso?
First of all, I don't think that the 2 per thousand police staffing mandate is the issue with the budget. We have a structural budget deficit. We have more money going out than we have money coming in. And there's no magic answer for that. We're going to have to come together as a business community, residents, and city council and city management to figure out how we're going to address that. That's the first thing. The second thing is, as a voter for voting in 1993, I feel like I was deceived, because in 1993, I voted for 2 police officers per thousand, and I voted to raise my sales tax. Well, I didn't get a chance to vote on that again. So I think it should have gone back to the people, and I think that the question should have been written very simply and not confusing. Yes or no? Do you want to pay for 2 per thousand, or do you not want to pay for 2 per thousand? But we're not going to keep the sales tax for an additional 2 years. Thank you.
Okay. Bob?
Obviously, being on city council, I was part of this decision. And, you know, there were weeks and months of very difficult negotiations, sometimes occasionally a little bit contentious, as you might guess. And we were able to, you know, part of negotiation is to be able to come up with something that not necessarily everybody 100% agrees with, but everybody can live with. And that's what I think that we came up with. It is a budget issue. There are other structural budget issues, but it is a budget issue. It's over 57% of the overall city budget, and it's not sustainable. It was going to continue to become more and more of an issue, and this is saving the city over $40 million in the long term. So was it the perfect settlement? Did it make everybody happy? No and no. But that's what negotiation and settlement is to come up with something that you can take something from that is good and that everybody can agree is at least a partial answer.
So for rebuttal here, I just want to clarify, it sounds like, Alfonso, you would be willing to vote to put the question before Aurora voters. Bob, you would not be willing to do that at this point. Bob, you want to go ahead?
At this point, it's a negotiated settlement, and no, I wouldn't be a proponent of putting it on the ballot.
Okay. Alfonso?
Yes, I was deceived. I voted for 2 per thousand, and it went away without my vote.
Okay, thanks.
And now a question from Sarah Castellanos.
This question is for Alfonso Nunez and Bob Roth. How important is it, in your opinion, for RTD to finish the I-225 Fast Tracks project? And if it's important to you, what steps would you take if you were elected to make sure it was completed? Alfonso, please start.
I think it's extremely important. One of the things that really comes to mind for me, of course, being a Ward 5 candidate, is the bridge that crosses Parker Road over to 9 Mile Station. Every day that I drive to work, that's my route. I see young women, children crossing the street, crossing 6 lanes of traffic. And I really think it's a life safety issue. So obviously, the rest of the thing needs to get built. It needs to go to the vote of the people. But also, when we bring it to the vote of the people, it needs to be a separate ballot. It can't be just extend the stadium tax. It needs to be something that is just to complete the entire rail system. So really, the life safety issue for me in Ward 5 is extremely important.
Bob?
Yeah, Fast Tracks is a long-term project. It's a lot longer term than most of us would like it to be. And obviously, yes, it is extremely important to the city of Aurora. I'm happy to say that through the work of council, but more importantly, through the work of our city staff, we were able to secure a larger portion of the $380 million than most people thought we would be able to secure. We were able to secure $90 million for the next piece of that from Parker to Iliff. Now, that's a very small piece, and it's a lot of money, and it's a slow process. But at least through our efforts and through, more specifically, city staff's efforts, we were able to secure a large portion of that money and take the next step forward. Yes, it is a big issue, and it needs to continue to be addressed.
Alfonso, what steps would you take to make sure that RTD knows that it is a very high priority for Aurora? Could you both answer that, please?
Well, obviously, I would probably be the shadow of Mr. Tobiasen, who's doing a fabulous job right now with being on the RTD board. But I would fight to make sure that that gets built. And especially, this reminds me of the question that you were asking Councilmember Market and Adrian, excuse me. This is where I feel we got the short end of the deal. We should have had our stuff built as well.
Bob?
Can you repeat the question?
What steps would you take to make sure that RTD knows that it's a very high priority for Aurora to complete this Fast Tracks project?
You know, I'm already taking some of those steps. I am working with Tom Tobiasen, and I have attended Heather Garden's fact-finding meetings with Tom and being in close contact with the RTD directors. So, you know, I think that we need to continue to have a voice with the entire metro area as well as with RTD to let them know how important this is for our city and for our future.
And now a question from Dave Perry.
My question is for Molly and Adrian. And Adrian, it's clear that you're trying to set yourself apart from Molly here on several positions, one of them being possibility of tax increases and the kind of thing that taxes pay for city services. And I wonder, since you work for Jefferson County Mental Health, which is a taxpayer-paid entity, how it is that you would want to argue against the importance of raising taxes for certain services that are obviously a benefit to everyone in the community. And Molly, if you would address that I'm assuming that you do support the Recreation Center initiative at this point, and I think I've heard you say that given what the economic climate is, the wisdom of asking for taxes for something that some people say might or might be frivolous. Adrian, you want to go ahead and give a stab at that?
Absolutely. I support the need for mental health services in every community, particularly in this community. As you know, I work for Jefferson Center for Mental Health. So of course, this is an issue that's near and dear to my heart. However, I also think, like our citizens are doing in terms of budgeting, we need to do the same. I don't think the answer is raising taxes. I think it's looking at our budget and identifying the things that are a must-have versus the things that are not. It's all about priorities.
Molly?
Thanks. And I am a proponent of the Recreation Center initiative. And just a little personal story. Years ago, my son brought me a gladiola from my garden, which gardeners know you shouldn't really pick, but he brought me a flower, and it was sweet, and I said thank you. 14,000 Aurora citizens signed a petition saying they want to improve their quality of life. They want something for their children to do. They want someplace for themselves to go. They want Aurora to be known as something that's not stagnating and closing everything, but something that's on the forefront of exciting things to happen. Just because council didn't think of this doesn't mean it's not a good idea. The citizens that have been involved have gotten tons of expert assistance from all kinds of folks that know all kinds of things. And the question is sound. It's a simple question of, do you want to improve the quality of life and make the city better for the future? And again, improve your property value by investing in the future. So that to me is a simple yes question.
Okay, Adrian, given what you said, if there were going to be deep cuts into Jeffco mental health and you might lose your job or half of the program would go away, would you support a tax cut for something? Is that kind of priority where you would support a tax increase to preserve a program like that?
I'd have to look at everything on the table and identify the things that are most important. I'd like to also comment on what Molly said. I too think it's fantastic that 14,000 people went out and worked very hard to get the attention of this and bringing it to the ballot in terms of the recreation. Unfortunately, we're living in very difficult economic times. What we're seeing in Aurora is the same thing that we're seeing in our country at large. We have to buckle down, identify our priorities, and figure out where we want to spend our money. Again, it's all about jobs. Is it fantastic if the kids in our community have a great place to play? Without a doubt. Is it better if they have a home? Is it better if they have food? We want to make sure that we meet the essential needs of the people in this community before we go out and we look at some of the other things. Again, let me just please say, I think it's very important that we support an initiative like this. This is just the wrong time to do it.
Thank you. I will now direct a question to... Oh, I'm sorry.
It always amazes me. You talk about wanting jobs. Where do you think they start? They start with initiatives that make things happen. In Adrian's defense, I did work for the Aurora Mental Health Center for a number of years, and we actually tried to do a 1 cent per person increase across the community. And the community at that time chose not to support that, which was unfortunate. But back to the jobs thing, this is all about jobs. You have construction jobs, you have the spin-off of jobs that come from that, you have the sales and use tax, the building permits, all that stuff is about jobs, not to mention physical fitness and health and wellness, which is one of the things that Aurora wants to be known for.
Thank you. Now I'll direct a question to all the candidates. The voters in Aurora have turned down attempts to increase taxes to pay for libraries in the past. There's another question on the ballot this year and possibly one in 2012. Is it time for a new way of thinking about the role of libraries in our community, both in terms of how they're funded and the types of services provided in today's digital world? We'll begin our answers with Bob Roth.
Thank you very much. Obviously, this is a very topical topic. You know, unfortunately, I'm very concerned with the current GID that's going to be on the ballot because basically that library was built for a community of approximately 7,000 people, and now they're going out to about 70,000 people asking them to support it. And when that first came out, I figured that part of Ward 5, even though that library isn't in Ward 5, part of Ward 5 would be affected by that. In reality, over 80% of Ward 5 is being asked to support a library that's not even in their ward. I'm all for libraries. I think we need libraries. I do think that in this digital age, they need to morph a little bit, but I think that this was the wrong solution. If it was a solution where it was a regional library district, I would have been in favor of it. But for a large audience like the 70,000 to support a library that was built for a community of 7, I'm not in favor of that.
Alfonso Nunez.
Karen, were you asking if we would go to do a special district for all libraries?
I can ask it again. Voters in Aurora have turned down attempts to increase taxes to pay for libraries in the past. There's another question on the ballot this year and possibly one in 2012. Is it time for a new way of thinking about the role of libraries in our community, both in terms of how they're funded and the types of services they provide in today's global world?
Mr. Roth is correct regarding the GID for the Mission Viejo Library. I think we do need libraries in our community. They're the foundation for a strong community, but the Recreation Center initiative was successful because we brought in the residents. So again, if we're going to do a general improvement district for all libraries, we need to bring in the residents, we need to bring in the business community and the school districts and find out if this is what they want to do. We need to ask the people if this is what they want to do. If this is what they want to do, then yes, of course, we move forward and we do it and we support it.
Adrian Markopoulos?
It's not something that I would support at this time. Although I love libraries and have spent a great deal of time there, particularly because of my humble beginnings, it's still not something that I can support right now. What we're seeing now is electronic books. So we do have different avenues for getting information. The vast majority of our kids are going online to get the news. So I think what we have to do is really look at the money that we have to spend and spend it wisely. In terms of an additional tax increase, do I support that? Absolutely not. Even though 14,000 people that Miley mentioned are in favor of this rec improvement, there are a good 60,000 people in our ward. How do those people feel? Are those people also comfortable with having a tax increase? I think we have to go back to the basics in terms of what are the most important things that we need now.
Molly Margaret?
And thank goodness for democracy, people get to make choices all the time. The library GID is a fascinating question. I really want us to create a separate district that is governed separately and managed and funded separately to keep libraries in the place that they need to be for the futures. Again, in implementation, libraries are jobs. All applications are online. You have to have access to a computer and internet in order to apply for a job, in order to check your references, all of that. I think we need to repurpose libraries. We have a small business development center that is now in the library and can be incorporated in a broader sense. We have the opportunity to put some of the computerized programs that other systems have, job training, Arapahoe Douglas Works, not to mention the fact that our library is supposed to be the library for the Community College of Aurora when we started it as a college without walls. So another venue for being able to maintain and secure a library. I do think we have to look at how it's governed, which then drives how it's funded. The use of special improvement, business improvement, metro improvement, GID, all the different Title 27 districts has got to be looked at to figure out what's the best way to make it work, but it's got to be repurposed differently.
Thank you. This concludes the question and answer portion of the forum. You will now have the opportunity for a 1-minute closing statements, beginning with Molly Margaret.
Well, thanks. I had notes to that effect somewhere. I really thank you sponsors, thank you people for being here, and thank you viewers. I love what I do. I love what I'm able to do on behalf of people. Over 800 ward meetings, 100 editions of the newsletter, 300 citizen requests that elevated to the level of needing to be formally involved because of crossing departments. Countless thousands of people responded to and answered. You bet, I love Jack Tierney. He's one of my dear, dear friends. There's not a lot you can do to fight the lack of business loaning available throughout the country. So I mourn the loss of the businesses on Havana as much as anyone. Have been intimately involved because they're my friends. So I want to continue serving the people that I serve, continue answering the questions, giving voice to people so that they can answer their own questions and begin to believe again in the concept of democracy and the concept of the freedom to make choices and to be empowered. That's what democracy is, and that's what I love helping to teach and work with my constituency on achieving. So I'm asking my constituents to market for Margaret. Thanks.
Adrian Markopoulos?
I want my name, Adrian Markopoulos, to be synonymous with jobs. I understand the importance of jobs. As a former small business owner, I understand how difficult it can be. And I think as a city council member, I would work diligently with business owners to make sure that we bring new businesses and help assist existing businesses. I'm running, again, because I want you to have a choice. What I'm hearing in the community from business owners is that they're not getting the support and backing that they need. I want to be that voice for them. I want to make sure that businesses are here because they bring jobs and jobs bring revenue. Help me make a change. My name is Adrienne Markopoulos, and I am not a career politician, but I will work effectively for you.
Alfonso Nunez?
Yes, I just want to thank the Sentinel staff, really good questions, and I want to thank everybody viewing. Community service is what I'm about. I can't help it. I'm running for Ward 5 to be the voice for the people of Ward 5. We have several issues in our community. We have the bridge that I mentioned before that needs to be built at Parker Road for RTD. If you live around a golf course, you don't want your golf courses to be privatized. If you're dealing with the permit process, you want the permits to be reasonably priced, and you want them to be done in a timely manner. And if you live close to Hampton, you want to make sure that the trash trucks that generally say the city and county of Denver driving down Hampton, that they kind of curb the times that they drive down Hampton. So that's what I'm going to be. Hopefully you'll give me the opportunity to be your voice for Ward 5. Again, Alfonso Nunez, and I'm asking you for your vote. Thank you very much.
And Bob Roth.
First of all, I echo everybody. Thank you very much for all of your involvement and for being here. We talk about jobs, 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 and that's what's important. I want to let you know that I have received endorsements from the business community that's going to create those jobs. I've received endorsements from Associated Builders and Contractors, Associated General Contractors, the Credit Union League of Colorado, the Colorado Apartment Association, Colorado Contractors Association, and many others. I've also received the endorsement of all 4 current at-large candidates, Clellan, Fitzgerald, Frazier, and Pierce. And there's one particular endorsement that I'd like to read to you briefly. I strongly endorse Bob Roth. Bob Roth listens to the citizens, then he rolls up his sleeves to work on local issues that matter the most, quality of life issues that affect us all day to day. That's Sue Sandstrom, Arapahoe County Treasurer and former Ward 5 Council member. Please visit my website at www.bobroth.org. And I ask for your support. A vote for Bob Roth is a vote for Ward 5. Thank you very much.
We thank the candidates for their participation and Aurora Channel 8 for coverage of the forum. A special thanks to our media representatives from the Aurora Sentinel, Sarah Castellanos and Dave Perry. We'd like to remind viewers that all forums will be repeated here on Channel 8 throughout the month of October up to Election Day. Schedules can be found in the Aurora Sentinel or auroragov.org/Aurora8. They are also available on the web at youtube.com/The Aurora Channel. We encourage all registered voters to know the candidates, know the issues, and return your ballot by Tuesday, November 1st. Thank you and good night.